Domo domo, what is up everybody? Welcome back to the Anime Lounge. I am your host, Steady, official Jujutsu Kaisen manga translator. We are here again for another anime versus manga comparison video. And damn, what an episode it was. For us manga readers anyways, we knew it was coming and we had... I was actually afraid that the hurdle was set a little bit too high, to be honest. You know, it's one of those things where you get so hyped for a thing, and then you set the bar so high that it's hard to kind of reach that, right? I'll say that they definitely did reach that for sure. Good, and hope you got something to drink too while you're relaxing. Got my Jujutsu Kaisen cup here going on. Have to be careful because I have hot water in here. There you go. Yeah, maybe grab a snack or something too. And I want to say thank you, of course, as always, for helping spreading that positive juju with a like, comment, sharing if you have family, friends, dogs, whoever, a grandmother, grandfather who likes Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't know, maybe. But definitely episode 7 was kind of an interesting case in the episodes that we've seen so far, because I would say that this is where, of course, it represented a lot of what happened in the chapters that it covered, although it definitely took a lot of creative liberties, like I said before. So episode 7, titled Assault, covered chapters 14, 15, and about halfway through chapter 16 as well. So about 2.5 compared to the 3 or 3+ chapters that we've seen the last couple episodes, and definitely because of the content, you know, kind of the extra little scenes of action and things like that. And it was very well spent. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be completely honest, this is where they were spending a lot of their time, I'm sure, in production, kind of leading up to it, because I mentioned kind of in my previous couple episodes that you could see a few moments where the animation was getting a little bit, I hate to use this, but a little bit janky, and perhaps a little bit of an afterthought. Not really an afterthought, because it's been very high quality animation, but there were definitely some moments where you could tell, like, oh, they had the B team do this, didn't they, kind of deal, or they didn't spend too much time on this, did they? Because with episode 7 here, every single scene, like literally frame by frame, was just top tier. So definitely one of those episodes. But hey, enough of the intro, let's get into it. Episode 7, manga versus anime comparison. Let's do this, alright. Ryuiki Tenkai. All right, so we are here. I'm gonna skip the first few moments of the episode because it was basically kind of overlaps what we finished off with in episode 6. But we start out here, of course, with Jogo not wasting any time. He immediately kind of summons this little volcano-looking thing on the side of the kind of the wall, right? And this very much was the same way that it was represented in the manga, kind of even the angle and stuff too, how it was kind of shooting down to the left across the highway here. So, and of course, kind of one of the real famous scenes is of Gojo, and kind of in the manga, it was so iconic because you remember kind of it formed this kind of sphere almost around him as he's kind of using his, well, it's not the domain expansion, it's just kind of like his infinity. And they had this really cool kind of effect here in the anime of, it almost looked kind of like digitized. I don't know how to explain it, but you know what I mean, right? Whereas compared to the previous panel, the fire that was coming out of the volcano, and I've noticed this kind of like the curses even too, and some of the powers, they kind of, it's almost like this weird hand-drawn kind of like very flat kind of aesthetic. So it's a little bit different than what we see with the fire forming around Gojo here, as we kind of get our title screen for episode 7, which we translated in the manga as assault. And then this is where they really start to kick it up a gear with a lot of the kind of the effects and the distortion and things like that. And of course, this is the kind of stuff that you're not really going to get in the manga, right? So in the manga, you just had kind of Jogo kind of summoning his little the ember insects and stuff, and then shooting it. In the anime here, it was so intense, the way that it just kind of, like, they in the manga too, they did represent it kind of as this kind of shooting effect as well, but here it was just the way that it was, the cinematography and stuff was, and this kind of distortion. It seems that this is kind of their representation of Gojo's kind of infinity activating, right, his Mukagen Jutsu. And then even if you, like, this is one of those episodes for those kind of animation nuts out there that they want to analyze frame by frame, because there's all these kind of split second moments where the animation just kind of goes like wonky or does these really cool effects. Like when the ember insects approach Gojo, there's this crazy distortion effect of, again, to kind of represent them hitting the infinity, right? And then of course the insects kind of, you know, they do their little sound thing, and then boom, very much the same way that it was in the manga. In the manga, though, it was a little bit more pulled out. In the anime, they took the kind of creative liberty of really kind of closing in on the insects as they're kind of starting to get agitated, right? But I like the fact that they had this little effect of, you know, Gojo coming in and swiping Gojo's face with the fire. And pardon me if I mistake Gojo for Jogo. it's going to be I might do that a few times, so sorry, I apologize ahead of time. But this kind of like Ghost Rider effect here, you know what I mean, right? With those of you familiar with Ghost Rider, with kind of the head on fire. This was also in the manga as well, so they're staying true to that here and representing it. And I love this scene, and I'm so happy that they kept this in here, where Jogo is kind of walking away as we see the smoke kind of starting to fade out, and then Gojo's kind of just doing this like, man, when are you gonna learn? And then he makes that little kind of remark where he says, oh, it's just so smoky here. You know, that was kind of like a little blurb in the manga, so I'm glad that they kept that in here, because I've noticed that in the anime, if there is one thing that they're kind of leaving out, and it's understandable, is those kind of little small side remarks. Sometimes they do it, and sometimes they leave it out completely. But here they kept that in there. Gojo's kind of talking to himself, saying like, oof, so smoky here. And then, of course, Jogo completely baffled as to, oh yeah, and shoot, I've got him on my shirt today too. There you go. Yeah. Dark side. But then, you know, Gojo's kind of representation of the infinity, saying, you know, you hit my infinity. This, again, same way that it was represented in the manga. And I like, I like how it kind of turns into like derpy Gojo with the hand out saying like, hey, come over here, dude. You know, it was like that in the manga too, but they really kind of pushed it a little bit more as it's kind of closing in on him. So that was funny. And this was such a cool effect. Of course, Jogo kind of approaching Gojo's hand, and then this distortion that they represent here. Oh my god, like, they've really nailed this effect of the infinity and this kind of distortion, because of course in the manga we have this exact scene here as the hand is approaching, and you know, they can only represent it so much with kind of like lines, effect lines, kind of representing kind of like this weird like shaking. But in the anime, it's this distortion, but not only in the shape, but also kind of like in the color too. Oh, it just looks so badass. As Gojo, of course, you know, starting to get a little warming up to Jogo a little bit, and Jogo not taking kind to Gojo's invitation. As you know, Gojo is like, all right, my turn. and he goes in. And this was very much the same way. I will say that perhaps the manga, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm just looking frame by frame, but in the manga it was really like you could feel it when in the frame, just the way that it was represented, the punch here to the gut. I will say though, here in the next scene here of the blood kind of coming out of Jogo and approaching Gojo, and the way that they represented how, of course, he's still got this infinity activated, right? So the way that it kind of, you can almost see this wall of infinity around him. And I really like the creative liberty that they took here, because in the manga, it was almost kind of hard to tell at first glance, because it was just a few drops. And it did make it look like in the manga that it did stop. But here I like the way that they kind of added more, and kind of almost represented this invisible wall. So that was very, very cool, as they kind of pull out here too and show both Gojo and Jogo, and you can see the blood just piling up in front of Gojo, right? So very cool. And here it is, the convergence and divergence, of course, in red. And the way that they're kind of just pumping up the music in the background, like, I gotta say, the sound design team is absolutely amazing. Unsung heroes, I would say. Not that no one is talking hype about the music and stuff, but it's hard to talk about that, whether it be on Twitter and social media and things like that. It's always about the animation and this and that, but man, I'm telling you, the animation wouldn't be nearly as effective. It's effective, but without the music going in the background and really setting the mood, right? And then just the way that the light kind of hits Jogo as he goes flying away. And of course in the manga they represent it, just this huge trail just going through the forest here. And I remember this scene very distinctly in the manga, because you had Jogo he's kind of like tumbling the whole time as Gojo is kind of running in behind him. They don't have that here, which I was a little bit curious about, because I think it would have been cool to see Jogo kind of tumbling away as we see Gojo like running through the woods. Maybe he was, and I just don't see it. But they definitely extended this scene in the anime, because pretty much after Jogo goes tumbling away, and then he kind of gains his footing again, and he's he's like looking around, and he's getting ready to shoot Gojo if he comes up to him. This is where we have actually Gojo kind of coming up, and we have that effect with his eye, kind of like and then he kicks him. So it's a very short scene in the manga, but in the anime here they have him kind of like kicking him up and then throwing him and this and that, kind of all Dragon Ball style. So they definitely took a little bit of creative liberty in this scene in the anime. But of course immediately after the scene that I was just talking about with Gojo, and I like how they kept that in there with this little kind of eye. Like, looking back on it, it's kind of like, why? It's not like his eye is glowing or something like that. So I remember when I first read this scene, kind of like, is there actually something going on with his eye, or is it kind of like just a creative effect? Because this is the only time that we see it in the manga, so I think it was supposed to be just kind of like a little effect to show off Gojo a little bit here. But still very much the same way. We have Jogo thinking that he's, shooting towards Gojo, but we have him behind with this kind of crazy pose, ready to kick, and boom, as Jogo goes flying into the lake here, right? But of course, this is where Gojo takes the opportunity to say, hey, this is a good chance to maybe let Yuji kind of sit in and study a little bit. They don't really talk about it like in depth here, but basically what Gojo does is he teleports. And they talk about it a little bit in volume 0, and they talk about it a little bit in the main story as well, like especially in the flashback. But it's not really explained too much in depth, but there are kind of parameters as to how far he can teleport and like what the conditions and things like that are. So it's not like he can just like willy-nilly travel to anywhere in the world. He's not some sort of like teleporter like that. You know, he kind of manipulates space to a certain degree, and time for him kind of moves a little bit differently. So his ability definitely has kind of a lot of mathematic properties, space-time kind of properties. So this idea of kind of teleporting to, if they do go into depth about it later on, perhaps will kind of be explained. But as of right now, it's kind of one of those just kind of like sci-fi, you know how they have those kind of things like in sci-fi where they don't really go into too deep about it. It's just kind of like, just accept it for what it is. He can do it. But of course, the famous scene of Yuji pointing at Jogo saying, hey, his head is Mount Fuji. So they got the same scene here in the anime as it was in the manga. You know, Gojo just kind of holding on to Yuji. And it is kind of weird the way Yuji is just kind of like standing on the water too. It's assumed that Gojo is obviously manipulating space to kind of allow that to happen. But anyways, then we kind of flash. Again, we have to remember that this is all happening within like 10-15 seconds. Even though Gojo kind of teleports, he's teleporting to this basement here again, and then he gets him right out there. That's why Yuji is saying like, wait, weren't we just watching TV like 10 seconds ago? And yeah, they had this the little Lord of the Rings reference here. It's pretty obvious, and they weren't shy about, you know, like he was saying Sam and this and that, so it's not like they were being shy about it. Interesting. I mean, in the manga, it was just kind of like a blank screen, and Yuji was just kind of watching. But very, very cool the way that, you know, Yuji is just kind of with this intense focus as he's got both hands on the cursed doll here. And then he... whoa, you scared me there. I love the way that they represented that again, too. These are the little moments that I'm telling you, just kind of... You really have to give props to the animation team to leave it in there and to kind of have these comedic moments represented properly and kind of go that extra mile. It would be so easy to have Yuji just kind of be like, oh, or something like that, but the way that they kind of have him whited out and stuff like that too, it's very cool. As Gojo explains to Yuji, I'll show you kind of the top of what it means to be a Jujutsu sorcerer in domains and domain expansion, as they are back at the lake here. And then just this kind of, I like the way that they kind of zoomed in on Gojo's mouth here as he's saying this, Datte kimi yoai da mo, you know, this kind of like, but you're weak, so it's fine. Because in the manga it showed kind of like his whole face and kind of, it was kind of like a portrait. But here, the way that they kind of zoomed in on his face, his mouth, and the smile here, oh, it's little touches like this that definitely you're kind of like, all right, point taken. But then, of course, the famous scene of Jogo and poop, and the flames coming out. I'm not gonna lie, and then the way that they kind of pull out here and really exaggerate the way that the fire is coming out here. Kind of reminded me of Kylo Ren's lightsaber ignition, so I thought that was pretty funny. I don't know, I mean, surely I wasn't the only one that thought that, right? But yeah, just this kind of intense face of Jogo, just kind of absolutely furious here. It was the same way in the manga. They had this kind of vertical panel of Jogo just kind of like, and next to it we had Yuji like freaking out, like, this guy is weak, you know, compared to anything that I've seen before. This guy is an absolute monster. And it's intense because like even Jogo even heats up a little bit more as he, and then the wave comes out. But if you kind of go frame by frame here, even there was this like little moment right here that I'm showing you guys, where it kind of goes like white and has kind of like this drawing style here. Just these little touches really makes it really special, you know. And even the way that that you can feel the heat almost, right? The way that they kind of discolor it a little bit, where it's all of a sudden becomes kind of like warm in tone and kind of unfocused a little bit too. You can feel it. You can feel the energy kind of coming towards you. So, oh, just so amazing. And then of course Gojo kind of saying, "Don't worry, kid. Like, we're good. Like, I got you. I got you." So then, but then Jogo's not wasting any time. He uses his domain expansion, Coffin of the Iron Mountain, and yeah, I mean, it looks absolutely amazing. The way that the way that it was kind of framed here, again, the same way that it was in the manga. I mean, it would be so easy for them. Like when Sukuna did his domain expansion, for example, they kind of had that like mirrored, you know, the malevolent shrine on top and bottom, and kind of the contrasting red and green colors. And that was very cool as it is. And of course they took kind of the creative liberty, but here they kind of showed a little bit of restraint and just kind of, you know, just did it as is. Of course there's a lot of kind of more movement and stuff, but just these kind of real hard-hitting panels are the same way that they are represented in the manga, and it's absolutely amazing as we see this kind of lava flowing in the background and kind of like little eruptions and stuff. Jeez. But then I like how Gojo's little, all right, time for Gojo's lesson on domain expansions, as they have this little, you know, like old school, like 4x3 screen here. I mean, this brings back memories too, right? You know, just kind of like for the OG anime fans out there, you know, just seeing this 4:3 ratio as is, it's kind of like, oh my god. And it's cool, even the way that they have this kind of huge rock coming in and just kind of splits up, very much the same way that it was in the manga as well. But this whole explanation thing was a lot more elaborate, I would say. You know, the way that they had kind of this wizard and witch kind of going at it here was a lot more exaggerated, right? But here we go. I mean, this was it, right? And I absolutely love the way that they were kind of cranking up the music. And then I'm so glad, because I was getting a little bit worried because the music was getting like really, really hype. But I love what they did, how they all of a sudden just silenced it, just cut out the music, and then things just slow down. You know, it's like it was just so awesome. And of course Gojo with the famous pulling down the blindfold, and oh my god, it's Gojo Steely Blues doing his best Frank Sinatra. I will say though, I'm pretty sure that in the manga, that his eye here, you know how they have like the kind of the white, kind of grayish bushy eyelashes here? I don't think it was as exaggerated, if at all, in the manga. In fact, let me check real quick. Yeah, so I was right. In the manga, the eyelashes aren't there. It doesn't really, I mean, in the manga it's still such an iconic scene, because it's like the first time that we see Gojo without his blindfold and this and that, and the hair kind of like draping down. But I mean, if we're talking about manga versus anime comparison here, then the fact that they added the bushy eyelashes, and this is something that we see later on in the manga series as well, is that anytime, you know, it's not like we see it all the time, but anytime we do see Gojo without his sunglasses or his blindfold or whatever, his, you know, his kind of like these white bushy kind of eyelashes really do stick out. So they decided to put it in there, which yeah, I mean, it's just fine. You know, it obviously it's a look, and it's perhaps not as exaggerated as it kind of pulls out here, but you can still tell that there are kind of the eyelashes there. And then of course just this iconic profile shot of Gojo here. You know, even as a guy, I'm like, ooh. But you know, it's hard not to be jealous of this guy. But anyways, it's very cool, because then the next panel we see just kind of like this, and Jogo. This is such an iconic scene again here too, of Jogo just kind of, you know, the angle, because in the manga it's just kind of a big nice double spread of Gojo saying unlimited void on top, and then on bottom is where we get this scene of Jogo kind of just like freaking out, and you know, we see that blood kind of just trickling down. In the anime they have this blood trickling down, but I'm looking at the panel here in the manga and we don't have that blood kind of coming down. Super small difference. It doesn't really matter, I guess, but this is where the manga really kind of gets left behind. Not left behind, but you know what I mean, where all of a sudden the anime is like, all right, time to show what we got. And they have these kind of like crazy weird like kaleidoscope scenes, and we get this weird one of like this atom, it looks like, and then we get these kind of like weird bubbling, like looks like cells or something like that, and then the void. And this is where the anime kind of definitely took a big creative liberty with this representation of this kind of, it almost looks like an eye, right? And I think that is very much intentional. You know, it looks like a pupil, and it looks kind of like the iris around it, but it also very much kind of represents this idea of kind of like a void, right? But then I love the way that they just kind of like, almost you can almost sense this kind of like this paintbrush just kind of splattering, and this is very much an effect that they had in the manga. In the manga it was kind of black splatter on a white background, but here it was cool that they kind of had this white splatter, kind of almost creating empty space within this void. A lot of emptiness and a lot of voids and and this and that. So very, very cool. As we get another shot and kind of pulling out, and then we have Jogo in the middle of this kind of eye void looking thing. I mean, shoot, I mean, set that thing up as a desktop wallpaper or something. It looks absolutely amazing. And this is the next scene here, where they show kind of Jogo from underneath. This is kind of the real iconic scene that I remember, because this is the same way that it was represented in the manga. So this is where I mean that the anime really kind of kicked it up a notch, because when when he said unlimited void, the next page we're pretty much looking at what we're looking at here in the anime. So in between that, they had a lot of this kind of like the weird effects, and then we had this weird eye looking thing, and then the splatter, and so they definitely kind of kicked it up a notch. As we see Gojo coming in, and oh my god, his blue eyes are so beautiful that they're glowing even. You know, it's like, okay, we get it. He's super hot, okay? Like, I get it. I'm sorry, I'm just jealous is what it is. Although I used to have white hair too, but this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I do not recommend it. It really messes up your scalp and your hair and stuff. So if you're one who is worried about that kind of stuff, don't do it. But anyways, then we have Gojo, kind of a close up on his beautiful blue eyes and his bushy eyelashes. Okay, I get it. But this was cool because and of course I'm sure a lot of you guys noticed it too, when he kind of pulls out the head here. This scene was not represented in the manga. In the manga it was just he had his kind of hand on there, and then the next scene was from the outside of the bubble, and then all of a sudden we see kind of like the head rolling. But here they decided to represent it, and not only that, it's this kind of like brush painting, almost kind of like that you can, I don't know how they do an effect like this digitally, but it almost looks like an actual paintbrush, you know, like a Chinese paintbrush or something, as we see the red blood kind of splattered across. So a very, very interesting scene. I mean, and then we have Gojo with, again, if his steely blue eyes and his bushy eyelashes weren't enough, now he has super long legs too. Like, geez, okay, goodness, we get it. Because, you know, in the manga, they did have this scene too of him kind of like stepping on Jogo's head, but it wasn't this exaggerated. You know, like Gojo is meant to be like, this is actually canon. Like, Akutami Sensei has said that he's over 190 centimeters, so 6 feet 2 inches. So he's a pretty tall guy considering, you know, for Japanese anyways. And I'm not just saying that, it actually is, you know, Japan is notorious for having a very low height average compared to the world. I think number one is the Netherlands. Like, they're super tall over there. But anyways, then we have kind of this scene from the cliff here as we see Hanami. Where is he? There he is, Hanami. You know, and this was actually very cool because we see Geto talking to Hanami. And in the manga, Hanami is just kind of got this like weird script for what he's saying, but someone on Twitter had apparently reversed what he's saying in the anime, and he's actually speaking Japanese. Really cool effect, kind of one of those like if you play it backwards kind of deals. So when Geto is saying here to Hanami, like, you can go and save him if you want to. I don't know if cursed spirits have that kind of emotion. Hanami actually says back to Geto here, well, we are the true humans, so I will. So very, very interesting. Obviously something that you can't do in the manga, so that's something that we're going to have to kind of keep an eye out for in the anime, and I'm sure you can probably find YouTube videos and stuff of it already, people reversing Hanami's speech. But yeah, I'm not going to do that here. So you can find those yourself. But then we have, Hanami coming in with the save and the beautiful feel of the flowers. And then I love, of course, they kept this in there. I'm so happy they did, with Yuji and Gojo just kind of like, oh, pretty flowers, as he kind of snaps out of it. And then Yuji, is like, I'm good, just go, I'm good. And then the next moment he's like, wait, maybe not good, come help me. And I almost kind of forgot about this little like weird tree monster thing here. I remember Yuji kind of getting pulled away and stuff, but this is why it's so cool to watch the anime, because we kind of get reminded of these scenes that perhaps we forgot about, because in the manga they do have this little like weird tree monster thing too, as Gojo does this weird kind of like slash thing, which isn't really explained, but it's kind of assumed that perhaps it's him just kind of like shooting cursed energy, but who knows, maybe it's something more, and we're not really supposed to think twice about it, but it was actually significant. I don't know, but based on where we are in the manga, that still hasn't been elaborated on. But we have Yuji kind of doing his like, I'm sorry, it was my fault that he got away, but you were the one that brought him here, weren't you, Yuji? So cool that they kept that in there. And Yuji's with the, yes, Gojo Sensei question. Yeah, Yuji, what's up? What's the Kyoto Goodwill event? Definitely this is kind of a precursor to the next arc. And we are definitely moving at a quick pace. Before the anime season had started, I did not think that we were going to get to the Goodwill event arc, or finish the Goodwill event arc anyways, in the first season, which is told to be 2 cores, which is 1 core is 12 episodes, so 24 episodes in the first season. And at the pace we're going at, we could definitely get through the Goodwill event arc, and I think we might, because I don't think you can really get into the Goodwill event arc and not finish it in the season, and it would be a perfect place to finish off the first season. So yeah, we definitely have that to look forward to as we kind of flash sideways to Ijichi getting stared down by Principal Yaga, same way that it was in the manga, right? And then we have kind of flash again somewhere else where we see Geto in this very creepy apartment. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but it is kind of dark, right? But this is, there are a lot of kind of this style of apartment in Japan is very common, where you have the hallways kind of facing outside, and then you have the stairwells and stuff like that. But anyways, and that's cool. Of course, we have the kind of walking onto the beach here as we see Mashito. Of course, anime only people will. This is the first look that we get at Mashito, but manga readers are well aware with this guy. I won't say much more than that. But Mashito is reading this book, which in the manga is just kind of like a little blurb. It doesn't really say anything, but a little research has led me to find out. Someone had pointed out on Twitter that he's reading this little book here, and it says Kumo no Kyojin, which is the Cloud Giant. And you know, I was like, oh, is that some sort of famous book or whatever? But apparently it's just a little self project which Akutami Sensei, the mangaka for Jujutsu Kaisen, inspired by Kubo Taito of Bleach fame. Kubo Taito Sensei had apparently did a little self project of writing poems and compiling poems into a little book for themselves. I don't think this was ever released or whatever, but apparently Akutami Sensei, so this is actually Akutami Sensei's little pet project self work here, which Mashito is reading. So kind of a fourth wall break here. So very cool stuff. A little bit of trivia for you as we see Hanami and Joe holding Jogo's head. And then I love Geto's kind of little, you know, this was the same way that it was in the manga. And I really remember this face in the manga too. So I'm glad that they kept it in there. Very funny. As we kind of, our final scenes here are of closing in on Mashito. I will say though, this isn't really a complaint or anything, but the voices for Mashito and Geto were so similar that I started getting a little bit confused. I'm not gonna lie. And it's not such a big problem because it's not like they're always spending time with each other or whatever, but I will say that, I don't know, and maybe this is kind of a little bit too much of a gripe, but yeah, I will say that they might want to look into trying to distinguish a little bit more when these two characters are talking to each other. Maybe that's just me though. A little bit of nitpicking. If otherwise, it was absolutely amazing. Of course, hearing the voice actor for Geto is perfect. Voice actor for Mashito is perfect. I'm just saying that they sound very similar. But in the anime here, they decided to kind of really close in on Mashito's eyes here, and you can even see like the different colors. And yeah, and that's pretty much where the anime ends here. And this is about halfway through chapter 16. So we're definitely through volume 2 at this point. And we're into volume 3 territory. But yeah, that is where the episode ends. And then we get a little strolling with Juju bonus extra again. And this is definitely supposed to be a Captain Tsubasa reference for sure. The way that they're calling to each other like Geto-kun and Mashito-kun, that's the same way that it is in Captain Tsubasa with Misaki-kun and Tsubasa-kun as they're running down the field and passing to each other. So maybe you Captain Tsubasa fans out there know about that. And Captain Tsubasa is, I know it's not very popular these days, but it's a huge Shonen Jump title, soccer manga and anime. I hear it's big in like European territories, which makes sense because they love soccer, football. But yeah, of course, a very funny little extra here. And even the way that Geto kicks Jogo's head here, it's very much the same way that it's shown like in Captain Tsubasa, kind of the exaggerated like kind of deal. And then we get our little extra, little preview of episode 8, which is called Taikutsu, which is boring or boredom. And then yes, here we go with the Todo Aoi, one of my favorite characters. He is coming in. Man, I am so excited. The voice actor for him is also famous for doing Giant in Doraemon, so should be good. But yeah, hey, now hold on, man, my mouth is going dry. I know. I'm sorry. My voice starts to kind of waver towards the latter half of the talk here, but hopefully it's not too bad. But hey, yeah, that was episode 7. I know a lot of it was just me saying, "Oh my god, that was so cool! This is so cool!" But I've got the little visuals here, hopefully to kind of show you the differences and similarities between the manga and the anime. Yeah, I mean, episode 7 was, of course, just absolutely hype, and gave us a little bit of insight into domains and domain expansions and things like that. But it was really just hype. I would say in terms of just kind of like the actual substance, this is where it's going to start getting really interesting in chapters 8 and 9. Chapter 8 starts off, episode 8, I should say. Episode 8 starts off exactly, I'm assuming, where we left off in episode 7, which would be in the middle of chapter 16, which, if that's the case, then our first scene should be of Fushiguro and Kugisaki being approached by this mysterious guy and this mysterious girl, right? Mai and Todo. So episode 8 will be getting very interesting, and episode 9 is where we get into... I'm sorry, I think I said before that the Goodwill Event arc is the arc after this, but that's not true. There's, of course, the what they call the Junpei arc. That's not what it's actually called, but and we get a little bit more into Mashito, this guy. Yeah, and this is where really kind of this starts really, bleep starts hitting the fan, right? And things start getting very, very real, and the consequences start getting very real. And then we also get introduced to the best character in the series, Kento Nanami. So that should be happening in episode 9, I believe. As always, thank you so much for coming by, guys, for spreading that positive juju, all the kind words in the comments and things like that. And I'm trying my best to get these videos out here, my Manga Lounge, Anime Lounge comparison videos, as well as I do definitely have ideas for theories videos. I know the podcast is something, Positive Juju podcast, Jujutsu Kaisen podcast. If you're interested in that, it's available on all platforms. Check it out, and I will have more episodes out regularly. I'm doing the best I can. I'm a one-man show here. I don't get paid to do any of this. So hopefully you can show me a little bit of support with some a like and comments, and help me with my algorithm at least. We hit 1,000 subscribers, so I'm able to get a little bit of revenue, a couple of dollars, enough to get myself a cheeseburger at McDonald's. But anyways, yeah, hey, thanks again. Cheers to you. You know how we do. Mata yoroshiku. Alright. Gojo. Ryoiki. Genkai.